Are you a coder who gets rejected based on no practical experience or because others have a strong LinkedIn personal brand and you don't? Your coaching institute will hate me for doing this, but I welcome you to Code to Career 30 days challenge where I have chosen these 5 total strangers out of my LinkedIn contacts and have taken up the challenge to help them go from jobless or underpaid to well paid job, that too without additional degrees and certifications in the next 30 days. If you are a coder and wants to get a well paid job, this is your golden chance to experience real project implementation from scratch that gets you a well paid job and builds your LinkedIn personal brand and also resume for absolutely free. So why just watch? Get into our WhatsApp community to experience this. Link is in the description. Now let's get started. Okay, great. So this is how we will take the session. I want to understand if there are any queries that you have because of which the past actions were not done. And also, I want you to go ahead and start posting on LinkedIn because that's where your branding will shine and people will come to know that you are doing something with your life. The second thing, you will be soon receiving a document. It's a bonus that I am giving. Two bonuses actually. This Saturday we would be having a session from one of my mentees who is doing now work in AMD and did some commits in kernel. So she would like to talk something about her experience of some embedded Linux and how her journey has been committing to kernel and all those things. And the internal details of socket. What actually is socket? There are many things. I tried to get the socket information from Linux, but Linux is a beast to actually understand. But at a very low level, or I should say, I should not say low level, but at a level which is enough to appreciate the capability of this IPC called socket. I have taken something called, you might be knowing this free RTOS called as MuCOS. So inside MuCOS, there is a, not inside MuCOS, from the community of MuCOS or ecosystem of MuCOS, there is a TCP/IP protocol stack where the socket implementation is present. So I will be sending a document, also the GitHub link, files and everything, so that you can go ahead and look at the code also and understand what socket is all about and a demo program. Everything is available, but I'm making the things so easy that you really know what is inside.
Vamsi, I have a question. Sirenji, Vamsi.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, Vamsi. So when I was going through the test-driven development, so I just gone through the test-driven development, and then I have posted the test-driven development actually, and then one of the managers from an company who came and asked me. Okay, so I'll ask a question. So he asked me like, okay, so requirements is given. So he started from requirements engineering actually. So he started, okay, based on requirements, you'll be start developing the thing and then you'll be doing the test driven development. So my question here is like, you'll be working with stakeholders. So if suddenly stakeholders change the requirement, at that time, test driven development will be useful or not? When he changes his requirements, most of the time they would not change the requirements because we would be going through the agreement and kind of stuff and all, like there won't be any changes. But if there is any changes, like the change needs to be done, there is no other go. So at that time, TDD will be useful or not, Vamsi?
Definitely. See, if you trace typically what used to happen when I started with when I was working for Wipro, we have something called as this traceability thing. What is the traceability is that I have a requirement, then the requirement will have its presence in some document, high level design document. Then you will be having low level design document implementation. I trace the requirement till the test case. Now flip the funnel. Either there is a requirement and you end up with a test case, or you create a test case and you end up with the requirement. It doesn't matter which appears first. In test-driven development, intentionally we are bringing the test case first to ensure that for a requirement, the appropriate code is coming into existence. So your customer, when he changes a requirement, actually you are now more equipped. Think like this. When a requirement changes randomly, still you are in control of it, because you know that your previous test case, which was working fine, remember, it was red, then you make it green. Now requirement changes, the green will again become red. You got it? Requirement changed, so the existing code will not work. It will fail.
Oh, got it. Okay. Oh, okay. Based on that condition, it will go up and down. Okay. When
No,
requirement
it
is
is not the
changing, it
question
will.
of going up and down. It's not the question of
Okay.
going up and down. The point what I'm making is, because the requirement has changed, the earlier code or the test case which was supposed to make the requirement pass, because there is some code existing. Now when I execute the test, the requirement is different. The code is now, I would not say wrong, maybe incomplete to satisfy the requirement. Let us assume a case where the requirement itself is not completely removed, but changed, enhancement. So the
Okay.
code which is existing is now incomplete, which means the test cases which were there for this code were also incomplete. Now what you are doing, because the requirement is changing, you are not going to the code. You again go to the test case, you modify the test case, and incrementally now you add the code. This is the question that you got, is the thing that actually happens. Test driven development does not shine because you wrote the test case and now there is a code which has come into existence which is in alignment with requirement. But it shines better because the requirements are still changing. You always have control, because your code is not going out of bounds or out of your control.
So TDD will be an iterative process, based, uh, like as you said, like as small modification and changes comes, it will be like an iterate. It'll iterate like.
TDD is becoming iterative because the requirements are changing.
Oh, okay. Okay. Vamsi, got it. And then, Vamsi, next question he asked me is like, I posted regarding the UDP. So he's into autonomous stuff actually. He told we are getting data from sensor and then we are doing it. Okay, when I'm doing with the UDP, so there is some disadvantage in UDP. He told like, uh, so I have mentioned in the post like there would be some data loss. There won't be any acknowledgement. So TCP will be having like receiving, transmitting acknowledgement, but UDP doesn't have. So he says like, how then why would we use UDP?
UDP as such is asynchronous, there is no acknowledgement. But that disadvantage is getting, I mean, it is overcome with using a protocol like TFTP, where you put some mechanism. See, even if you see IP is also is asynchronous only. IP also doesn't have any acknowledgement. It's a TCP which says that there has to be an acknowledgement.
Okay.
So UDP as such is, see, I would not say it is a disadvantage of UDP. You should understand that UDP was created for that. Because UDP is not holding or having these kind of capabilities, you have TCP.
Okay.
Why does a protocol come into existence? Because there is certain need. Most of the
Mm.
IoT devices can be connected over Wi-Fi. No,
Wi-Fi.
can be connected over Bluetooth, near field communication, all those things. But each protocol shines within its area. Bluetooth has a capable, or it is incapable to cross certain distance. Wi-Fi can cross certain more distance, but still there is certain. It is always power hungry. So you have low power protocols like Zigbee and all those things coming into existence.
Mhm. Yeah, this was the two question he asked me actually. Yeah, yes, I'll answer him. Yeah, he told me to do go research and then tell me the answer. Yes.
Yeah, typical. These are the typical questions you can expect when you are in an interview also.
Okay, Vamsi.
This is where practically implementing a project supersedes the knowledge you get by maybe a project that you read or you have somebody has implemented, which is completely done, but you did small modification. It has been my experience that it, and I still today hear people who are working in companies. I'm there in the project. I'm proud to say that I'm in the project, which is this, but I'm not doing the work. People have these things, right? So
Yes,
you know, get into deep into things and start implementing, you will get these things.
yeah.
Yes. Okay. Any other question? Anyone? Let us go to today's thing. Slideshow from beginning. So before we go for today's thing, I would like to mention this point that your actual project starts from here because you might have seen the document, which is the requirements document, where not every requirement is needed, like the security requirements and some other requirements. We will take what is needed, but my intention of putting those things is to ensure that even after these 30 days, you stick with the project and enhance it. It has been the case with previous project also. It had been the case with previous project also, and I expect the same thing to happen. 30 days, ideally speaking, the 13 sessions is not a time that is really enough to do so many things. So let me share the screen and then we will talk about today's thing. And this session, if you want to work with me personally, where I guarantee to work with you until you secure a well paid job, book a one on one call with me. Link is in the description. Then actually will help you to also overcome this fear, like, or this thing that is there in your mind, like, how can I start coding? I know C, I jump onto Geeks for Geeks. I do so much on HackerRat, I do so much on HackerRank, but then in interview, I don't know what happens. And when it comes to project, I don't know what happens. The C part of the interview where the tricky questions are asked, fine. But companies need people who actually solve their problems. And their problems need not be always reversing a linked list in a recursive fashion, right? Nobody needs that. It is only more or less like a filtering mechanism, and really to see if there is a really critical problem, how fast you can think and how quick you can, I mean, how fast you can think and how better you can think. So the first thing is lightweight TFTP implementation, the project proper we are going to discuss, and then we will understand what is the structured programming. And I gave a small example which I felt also is close to embedded systems, and people will have a recollection of something like keyboard scanning and all those things. So let me go further. Okay. So the requirement is very simple. We need both server and client, because the environment that we talk about, where if an example of uploading the firmware, the server would be having the binary file and the client would be requesting. Vice versa, whether the client requests or the server intimates that I have something to be shared with you, the trigger point can be from anywhere. Nevertheless, this transaction happens over UDP. Remember that I told previously also that if you have the TFTP implementation and you really don't worry or don't care about UDP, you can have directly the TFTP packet being sent on physical protocol like I2C or SPI or UART or anything. UDP facilitates more. Essentially, over a network because it has destination IP address, source IP address, and all those things. Otherwise, the TFTP, that stuff that you are doing, it can be put on RTOS. For people who feel that at this point of time, the better or the best bet that I will have is not to go with Linux, but still do the project where I understand the Linux stuff with respect to APIs or system programming, but then do a proper project where this particular protocol I see in action can actually choose any RTOS environment. You have an STM32, there are so many ports available. You will create one task of your TFTP and start it. And it's only one task, doesn't matter. But still you can see your code really doing some action on hardware. This is only for people who feel that I really want to get onto hardware, but I don't want to have Linux part in it. Definitely, simplicity and efficiency of UDP is what is shining here with respect to the smallest part, the smallest code that can be written. I can actually say this statement that if you can put the complete TFTP packet and you assume it as a string, your problem boils down to string manipulation or understanding a string. If you can put it as a character array and whatever the information is coming from any layer, I break it as tokens or whatever. I do a string operation. What is the complete problem boiling down to is you do the string concatenation at one place and then you start doing str on the other end. Yes, you know the boundaries or the demarcations in the string. So look at the problem in this simplest level. And that is possible with UDP. I mean, in fact, it is possible with everything, but with UDP, it is very much easily possible. And TFTP packet can be visualized getting transmitted over UDP in such fashion. If it is on an in an RTOS environment where you don't want this UDP stuff coming into picture, think of sending a string over UART. What you write on console is what I am saying. You take Arduino, in the setup, you populate the TFTP packet as a string. In loop, you do the console write. You see that your TFTP packet goes on the other side as a string. The only thing is that the client there who receives this string now has intelligence to interpret this string. How many of you are understanding this? How many of you get what I'm trying to say here? You can come to this level and understand the problem also, and then think at a higher level and abstractions. Yeah, maintenance. This is one fact where I thought can be a very subset of the actual project implementation. In case if it is not a complete transfer of binary file, any random operation that is or anything that is happening at the client side, you want to read that I I got powered up at so and so time, and you ask at what time are you up, at what time are you down, who logged in at what time. These kind of small operations and small commands can be given and you can get the response. Once this kind of transaction from server to client, once you are able to achieve, then you can go to the next part, which is I want to send byte by byte. And finally, I want to tell to the client, did you receive the binary file? Are you okay? Can you boot and all those things? Yes, develop, ensure, and support. When you are writing the code and even the code that I am giving, it is heavily for Linux environment. For RTOS people, you need to have certain APIs that you may not be able to use because the code that has been written and which you are going to get is tightly coupled with UDP. So when the compatibility of going with the ATAs and the code that you are getting, this is the extra amount of work that you need to do if you are switching to ATAs. All the operations that are supported or that are prescribed by the RFC 1350. So the next document that you will be getting is to read the RFC, which talks about write request, read request, data packet, and acknowledgement and error. TFTP is just that. With just 5 commands, it is able to achieve a transfer of any number of bytes as long as the communication is reliable, the physical layer or any other thing. First requirement. Second requirement also you can ignore. Third requirement is important. Fourth requirement is important. Second requirement, the octet mode is nothing but you are doing a byte by byte transfer. You can actually go for block transfer also, a collection of three bytes or 10 bytes or whatever. But the primary requirement is that the server should be able to handle write request and read request, because the client wants to read a file or the client might intend to write a file into the server because the server has enough space. You as a user, you say that, okay, TFTP server, this is the binary file or the firmware file which has to be transferred. So then that server initiates a write request to the client. Now the client has something to be given to server because it want to upload and store it somewhere. Then it will initiate a write request from its side. The client wants to read something from the server, it initiates a read request. So if you want to work with me personally, where I guarantee to work with you until you secure a well-paid job, book a one-on-one call with me. Link is in the description. Server as well as client both needs these two operations to be implemented. Then where is the differentiating factor? This is where the first program that you have written, the socket program, which tells these are the operations of server, where the server is listening and a client requests something, then it forks something and creates a, like it forks and it creates another instance. These are the operational aspects that differentiate. But when it comes to TFTP protocol proper implementation, client and server both needs to support, because that's a language. I might be calling over a landline and you might be picking up your call using your mobile phone. But as long as our language is same, the communication is done. It doesn't matter whether you are connected wirelessly or I am connected through a wire. Think like this. These requirements, PR1 and PR2, the performance requirements, Swaminathan entered. Okay. String operation, that's where I told it can be done in very, very less amount of memory, and it will not consume so much of CPU load also. The second thing I told, remember the first requirement, the octet operation. Now it is a block size. So you may have to add as part of your negotiation saying that I will not be sending bytes. Sorry, I will not be sending single byte. I might be sending a collection of 10 bytes or 25 bytes. Any power of 2, let us say, much more easy. I will send 2 bytes, 2 power 2, 4, 8, 10, 2 power, then 2 cube, 2 4, 4, 16. You can think of a block size negotiation also with the client. Vice versa, the client can negotiate with the server so that it reduces the load on the CPU and you are sending. See, every time when you're doing byte by byte is more taxing compared to single transfer of a block. This is optional. You can ignore it, because when you want to put access controls, rate limiting of denial of service attacks and all those things, these are all those kind of things. Let us say I have denial of service is that I hog some server so much that when the server is so busy addressing one client, when I say server is so busy, its resources are so consumed because of one client that it is not able to serve another client. But these are high level stuff. It is possible people do this kind of, what should I say, wrong things with this kind of networking stuff. But you can think these requirements are something which are given for you to probe much more deeper if you intend to improve your client and server code to be something like production grade. But definitely these kind of requirements, if you implement and you want to speak about it, is like that tempting cherry on the top of ice cream. People would love to really understand how you did this, why you did this, and all those things. And access controls is definitely, you can put an admin access, you can put an user plus password, all those stuff, access and authorization. This is also optional. Transaction logs for debugging and monitoring. Let us say the server has sent certain amount of communication, and at certain point of time I want to have a auditing, like what was the, what was it, or when was the time that a firmware has been upgraded, how many times that upgradation has happened, how many people logged in. So these kind of auditing information, the client can store it with itself or the server can store it. But this requirement is also optional. The second one is very common. I would say UR2 is something, if you can do, like security requirements, is very good. Modifiable configuration via simple file or command line arguments. Initially, let us assume you decided you had a transaction with the client or an agreement with the client, said that I will be sending 1 byte transfer. We will do a octet transfer. But you tell to the user that at any point of time, you can switch from 1 byte transfer to a block transfer. Now the user will say on the console, let us say he will say block comma 8. So it goes to the client, and the client configures itself that at any, when the communication starts or when it has to send a file, it is now not going to receive or send 1 byte but 8 bytes. Runtime configuration possible. This is easy to implement compared to other security requirements and other things. Yeah, deployable. This is where I told the code is given, will be given to you. How should I say the deployment thing? Maybe the ease of, I can say the ease of implementation. You can take it like ease of implementation, reliable operation under typical embedded system conditions, high temperature, low temperature, noisy environment. For example, you are sending the data over UART. So what are the things that can go wrong on a UART communication? Are you adding certain kind of things so that you are overriding the negative effects that comes because of the physical layer? Maybe a checksum, maybe a CRC, something, so that the reliability increases much further. Simple scenario, IoT devices requiring regular firmware and updates. The reason why I have chosen firmware update and I am bringing the IoT thing is, technical stuff you can keep on talking, but there is a point of exhaustion wherein either the interviewer or you or anyone who is listening to you can say that how much more technically can we go? You will hit a limitation and he will hit a limitation. But for the conversation to go on, the best thing is to take a use case and weave a story around it. You say that this is the requirement or this is the project I was trying to do, for which this has to be the requirement. And I started searching so many things. Then I found this. There will be a plot around your technical stuff that you have done, so that people understand the first question as to why all these things came into existence. The interview, if at all you are attending an interview showcasing this project, will not be a kind of thing which I say normally not an interrogation round, that you go, he asks a question or she asks a question and you say that this is the thing that I have done. So the use cases like these things provide fertile ground for you to talk more in-depth things also in a conversational manner. Yes, provides a portfolio of worthy projects demonstrating real world, and you trust me, these two things, if you do implementation of TFTP either on Linux or on RTOS, is going to increase your skills. Not trivial things like Arduino. See, Arduino also runs free RTOS. We have demo applications. But what is the use of running an RTOS on things like Arduino? Take STM32. So you have now something that you speak about STM32, you have something to speak about RTOS, you have something to speak about a use case, and you have something to speak about a protocol like TFTP. And you had those security stuff and all those things like CRC and all those things. You have so much to say to people. So I would like to stop here before I get into the thing how you can start coding. Any questions so far? If you want to work with me personally, where I guarantee to work with you until you secure a well paid job, book a one on one call with me. Link is in the description. Till now, any
So
questions?
yeah, so I had a question. That is the octet protocol, octet availability or the block transfer ability is inherently available in the TFTP, or is it something else, or is it something custom to our project?
The octet transfer, when I read the protocol specification, I remember, as far as I remember, the acknowledgement stuff and all those things is per byte.
Mm-hmm.
So every time you are saying, the server or the client will say that, okay, I have sent acknowledgement, send acknowledgement. So this is the overload. 8 bytes sent, the client is silently receiving. This kind of block transfer, I think, is an enhancement. But I will check once. That's why that time I think I remember, because I saw octet, I thought, why can't it be a block? But nevertheless, let me check and I will update in the group. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember it's byte by byte transfer only.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So
Hello, sir.
yeah, yes. No,
No,
who is
Swami,
it?
Swaminathan. Yes. So I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
just
Swaminathan, yes.
so on the RFC, like I see it mentioned 512 bytes of one block. So is it like variable or that is fixed? Because I read it
I
somewhere
think
that
it is
it has
some.
fixed.
I think it is block transfer only. That's what. Let me check with the. Let me check the RFC first, because I did not go with respect to this block size and other things. I was more focused with respect to the how the transfer is happening. This point also I will confirm.
Sure.
See, the RFC might be saying 512 or 1 byte, but this is configurable.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because I remember seeing it as
yeah,
fixed size.
you can
Yeah.
change it. But see, now the
Okay.
point what I'm trying to, what you need to understand here is, if I say that I am compliant with something, like for example, you say this particular software is POSIX compliant, or or it is as per certain standard, you ensure, it is only to ensure that the sender and receiver are immune to any changes that happen in between. What I mean to say is, if I know that these are the parameters of the function that has to be sent, and the standard says that the standard says that it requires 3 parameters, both the sender and receiver to adhere to that. Now, if you are talking with a device where it is compliant with RFC for the TFTP, and you are not compliant with the RFC, then there will be a problem.
Okay.
But when you go with your implementation, it is your own implementation. You can say that I can go for byte or 512 block or any size of blocks. And typically at that point of time, also you need to bear in mind that it is the transport protocol for TFTP was assumed to be UDP. So UDP can take that much amount of load. It is like assume that you have certain amount of baggage to be sent, but you have a very small vehicle. So the understanding is that this vehicle will take multiple trips. But imagine you have a big tempo traveler. So you put every luggage there and in one single shot it goes. If you
Sure.
go for UART, yes, a good UART connection also you can go for multiple number of bytes, depending on
So it
the
depends
quality of
on
the
the implementation of the lower layers. Like we are going for Ethernet that type, then let's say we go for high block size, and then else if it is UART or simple ones, then we choose lower pipes.
because Ethernet specification says that I can carry that much. The payload of Ethernet, the Ethernet packet itself is 1000 plus bytes, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, there's a question in the chat box by. Okay, UDP is tightly coupled in RTOS. No, I'm not saying UDP is tightly coupled in RTOS. What I said was the code that I gave, which is based on the Linux environment, the TFTP code assumes that the underlying transport protocol is UDP. What I am saying, if you go to RTOS, you don't have to think that, or you don't have to assume, or even force yourself to say that I will be having UDP only as a transport protocol. You can just have your UART protocol and carrying the payload, or it is transferring the TFTP protocol structure. Bhunesh, is it clear now? The code I am giving assumes that the transport protocol is UDP. But when you move to RTOS, you don't need to think like that. You can have your own low level stuff, which can be UART or I2C or SPI, and still do this transfer. Okay. Any other question? So here is another thing. Now we are getting into something called as storytelling. This is technical storytelling. And if you see the document, it clearly mentions that it's an inspiration. The structured programming concept that I picked up is an inspiration from chapter 5 of this classical book called as The C Companion by Alan Holub. It's a must book. You should really read it if you are somebody who wants to understand the middle part of what makes C so strong. The book actually says, if you go and read the preface, that this book is not a low level kind of book that you get for all the people who are big fans of Let Us See by Yashwant Kanitkar. It is considered as something like easy to understand. And there is this the C programming book by Dennis Ritchie, which is some heavy stuff, because within I think within 200 pages, major portion of everything related to C gets covered. And Yashwant Kanitkar, it runs into 500 plus pages, but very elaborate treatment. C companion is in between. It tells like how a particular control statement gets converted into assembly, what is actually inside it. You will see a flavor of why a jump instruction, how array actually gets treated inside memory, how pointers are actually, or why pointers are actually indirect addressing, those kind of things. You have complete implementation of printf function. Among all these things, this is this chapter, 5th chapter, which talks about the structure programming. The most beautiful statement in this complete chapter is writing code is actually writing code. In the sense, if you have to write a code, you need to first explain, or you need to put in words what you are trying to do. So he goes to the basics of writing an essay. How many of you agree to the fact that if at all I have to explain? If you want to work with me personally, where I guarantee to work with you until you secure a well-paid job, book a one-on-one call with me. Link is in the description. Explain you a complex logic You got in, you have a project, you went to your senior and you asked that person like, I'm not able to understand this particular piece of code, but I need to do some changes here. Can you help me? The point that he will start, from the point that he starts telling, he would be picking up the parts of the code, in the sense he will take the names from the code. But if you actually, if I record it and I play it as an audio, will it not be like an explanation of any other concept on this earth? If I want to explain you a quantum physics, or I have to explain you genetics, I want to explain you how politicians think, what is democracy or whatever, the kind of explanation I take, and the audio file, if you think, if you get for any kind of this topic, how different do you think is this audio file different from explaining the code? Not much different, right? It is just that the language or the kind of words that you use in a programming language or in your logic is bit different than the traditional things that come into other kind of topic. Essentially what I am saying is, the distinct thing between these two is vocabulary. Here I say if, else, while, and all those things. There I say some other words. So every domain has its own words which come together and we start creating essays. So this chapter enforces that start talking about the problem in plain English. Make your friend sit who is able to understand what you are speaking, because he or she is capable of that, and start explaining the problem in the plain terms, as how you are explaining anything to anyone. Then come to some specific nature. Start condensing the words and write pseudocode, where the pseudocode is little bit mix of the programming constructs, but also like English. Any non-programmer also can understand pseudocode. Maybe they are not capable enough to translate it to any programming language, but when they read the pseudocode, they understand that, okay, this is what is actually happening. And the pseudocode includes even the logic also. Then you refine the pseudocode. You define the pseudocode by talking about the requirement in deeper sense. Now, this is where when I try to club this concept of talking more about the thing that I want to do, converting into plain English language, when I start inducing the concept of test-driven development, I see that these both actually have a very unique but powerful collaboration. How many of you are getting what I am trying to? Yeah, yes, I will tell the book. How many of you are able to understand what I am trying to say? This is the most powerful tool that you can ever have in your career. This way of talking about problem as an essay and other things, then bringing the powerful tool called test-driven development. You are breaking here requirements one by one, one by one, one by one, and making the pseudocode and refining the requirement. And now you say that, okay, I have reached a stage wherein it is good enough for me to now write the code. This is where I want you to put a break and say that, yes, after this particular stage, this would be the programming language. But now I'm not writing the code, rather I'm going to test-driven development process and I'm going to write the test case. How many of you understand this powerful stuff? You do this, and to really appreciate what I am saying, just reverse engineer small piece of code. Reverse engineer a small piece of code, like let us say string copy. There is a source string and there is a destination string. Now, if I want to talk about what happens when you are doing a string copy, so I will say that, okay, you get a pointer to the first string, then you get a pointer to the string or the empty location where you want to copy. You read this character, then you take this character, or let us say swapping two variables. let us not go to even pointers. Swapping two variables using a intermediate variable. Very common logic. A will copy into the local variable, and then local variable is used to hold the stuff. Then B gets copied to the A, and A again gets copied into the B with using an intermediate variable. Now this same thing, I can write it as a very small paragraph. Then I can make it into a pseudocode. Now I'm not going to write that int A is equal to 0. I'm not going to write that. Rather, I'm going to write the test case. Can somebody think of what can be the first test case? Simple problem. Two variables have to be swapped with an intermediate variable. Common logic. What do you think the first test case can be? Or any test case? What do you think a test case can be?
फर्स्ट टेस्ट केस हम ये रख सकते हैं कि ऑल्दो ये चीज़ मैटर नहीं करती, लेकिन अगर इस चीज़ को हम बहुत ज़्यादा रिफाइन करें कि हमने नंबर्स को स्वैप करना है या कैरेक्टर्स को स्वैप करना है, वी कैन स्टार्ट फ्रॉम हियर.
Okay.
ठीक है. या फिर अगर हम पॉइंटर्स को एज एन इनपुट आर्ग्यूमेंट्स ले रहे हैं तो हम ये देख सकते हैं कि वो नल होंगे या नहीं, तो वी डोंट हैव अ इशू विद मेमोरी हैंडलिंग.
Okay.
फिर
Yes. What else?
सर काफ़ी केसेस बन जाते हैं.
No, it's okay. See, ultimately, when you write the test case, you write that code. See, because now you said that if I'm taking the parameters as pointers, then you have this test case of a null check.
No.
So what you are doing is now you are actually writing a test case saying that is pointer A is the int pointer is null or not, or this int pointer B, whether it is null or not. So you try to fail the first test case, right? You actually pass null and it is not caught and and the test case will fail. So now you go and say that, okay, this is the thing. In fact, you are not writing the error condition. You are actually passing the null and the code will not get executed. So now you go and check if it is null, then you do something. If this is null, then do something. Till the essay gets refined till to the point where you are writing pseudocode, there isn't much difference to what I said and what the book is saying. But the book says that after this is done, you go and write the code. Because when the book was there, I believe maybe TDD was not there. The concept of TDD was not there. But now when I actually use this TDD with this particular thing, I understood that, okay, I just have to detour, write the test case, and then go to the implementation, which also addresses whatever the questions that Chiranjeevi asked at the beginning, any kind of things. Because you actually brought in one more requirement, right? I told, let us assume that all are integers. But you said that what if the parameters are pointers? Chiranjeevi and others, are you able to now get?
Yes, from C. Yeah.
Instead of integers, now the pointers have come. So the requirement actually changed. So the test case
Now
now
it's going to red
and now
actually. No,
sorry?
No, now the requirement is going to red, as you said, from green to red. So we'll be having three phases, right? Red, green, and then the third thing. So when there's a requirement change, again we need to go from the first and then change everything and then like
No,
for
it's
test
not
driven.
the question of going there. Your test case will fail is what I'm saying. When the
Yeah.
initial API is assuming that the parameters are plain integers and not pointers, your check of your test case of assuming only integers is bound to fail. So you either change your test case or you modify, or you change your test case or write a new test case. Or you say that these both cases are valid and it's all whatever the thing that is required at your side. Is this thing clear to everyone? Because this is what is now going to change the way that you start writing the code. Don't get so obsessed with writing the code, but spend enough amount of time that you are able to articulate what you want to do. Then most of the things gets ironed out.
आपने जो मेथड बताया मैं सिर्फ उसको दोबारा एक बार टैली कर लूँ. सो आपने कहा है कि पहले आप रिक्वायरमेंट को इतना नैरो डाउन कर लें यूजिंग सूडो कोड कि आपको बिल्कुल आपकी पिक्चर क्लियर हो कि व्हाट यू वांट टू डू. एंड देन यू आर सेइंग कि बुक आपको कहती है कि कोड आप उसके बाद शुरू करो, लेकिन आप कह रहे हैं कि उसके बाद आप टीडीडी पे जाओ और अपने कोड को हर लिहाज से जितने टेस्ट केसेस बन सकते हैं आपको जो समझ में आए आपकी स्टोरी को यूज करके आप वो लिखो एंड देन यू गो टुवर्ड्स द कोड.
Yeah,
एम आई
don't write
राइट?
the code, but write the test case so that the next step would be that much amount of code which is not excess, but making the test case go from red to green. Because in the iteration that we did, when you said that checking the pointer as null, I'm only going to write if something equal to null. I'm not writing anything extra, right? Did you get the point?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, now let us go to the, if you want to work with me personally, where I guarantee to work with you until you secure a well paid job, book a one-on-one call with me. Link is in the description. Presentation and so structured programming is a disciplined approach. The variation, I should not say the variation, but the treatment of the structured programming in chapter 5 is not complete. Because structured programming, they also say that it is go to less code. Because at one point of time, people used to use go to. It's a go to is just an unconditional jump. That's where the problem is all about. So this is where I would also try to bring a little bit of assembly programming. You have this conditional jump on not equal, jump on carry, and you do that. And all your if statements, while statements, for everything is based on these jump instructions only. Because if I say if a equal to 5, then I say a is equal to a plus 10, else a is equal to 0. Now what is that if a equal to 5 is doing? I am comparing. I push some variable into accumulator and I will say compare this. If it is equal, then jump on equal to some other location. To some other, if you see, if you remember, if you have a little bit of assembly code, you have these labels. So you go to the label. But this is a conditional jump that you are doing. But go to is what? You can go to anything. You're not putting any condition. So yeah, some condition happens there, but at a high level, then you are saying randomly without any discretion that go to that location. Getting the point? So typically when people want to have more control over the code, because they have seen lot of ill effects of this random jump instruction in assembly, and when the C language creators wanted to make C language as close to hardware as possible and making C a high level, low level language, like all these shift operators and operators, go to also corrupting. And people understand that when people were that time more into assembly language coding only and they had this high level language, their way of thinking did not really change so much when they were using C. It was doing the same thing only. That's when evolution started happening, people thought that okay, we should let go the go to stuff and do it. But otherwise, if you see Linux code, there are many places where go to gets used. The focus is actually breaking down the complex problem into manageable sections that we already understood. How many of you actually went through the document where the scanning logic of keypad is defined? Did you go through that? The document, I wanted to make it, I could have taken any example, but I thought people will go through it and they will understand that how a key gets detected in a 4x4. The matrix logic is good enough for displaying the capability of the structured programming. At the same time, people will also have an understanding that, okay, this is how keyboard scanning happens. So the rest all slides are all about the code, but I will stay some time on this slide, but the next slides are all little bit about code. If you have any questions, we can discuss about it, but otherwise, this is the slide that I'm going to spend more time. Remember saying a problem in terms of plain English language as an essay. But this is something more refined. Array can be considered as a pure English term, quote unquote, or it can be a C data structure, where it is a data structure which holds similar objects. Even though I start talking saying that, okay, in a keypad, there will be rows and there will be columns, and each row and column will get intersected at some place. And then I have to detect whenever a key pressed, it will be at one of the intersection points. This is where a little bit of language understanding also is needed. Till now, I spoke in English only, but then I want to first understand, like, where should I hold, or where should I store the rows and columns? Somewhere I have to store, somewhere in the memory it has to be existing, right? Then you now probe into the language and see what are the variables or what are the storage facilities that this language provides. My plain English of array now becomes the C array. How many of you are understanding this? I started as a plain English stuff only, that I want to store my rows, I want to store my columns in some array. At that point of time, I'm not thinking the C array. But now I come to the C language and I see that array, C language is already having a data type called array which holds similar things. This is ये झटके से हो गया है. It's a straightforward transition. That's why it is not making so impact. But imagine if you are talking about a problem at a very high level, and you are saying that, okay, I need to store this, store that, store this. Then you see that, okay, these all things are talking about only one thing. Why not I bring them together? Then I look at the language and I see in the C language there is a structure. पर वो स्ट्रक्चर तक आने के पहले मुझे तो बहुत बातचीत हो गया ना यहाँ पे. Regarding so many things, I spoke so much and I understood that these are all the attributes of certain entity. Now, when I want to bring them together, I now come to the language and I see that there is a facility called structure here. Getting the point? Then once the memory is populated, then what is the logic I adopt to solve the particular problem? The scanning logic is all about that. Debounce logic is optional, but good to have. And finally, how do I want to receive the output? Scanning of key, detection of one key has been split into 4 different steps, but each step can have its own narration and each step can have its own pseudocode. This is the pseudocode. Initialize the keyboard matrix, define rows and columns. Now again, define here, do not think in the C terms of definition and declaration. It could be anything. I have to give it a name first of all. Then assign key values. Now when I'm assigning key values, I want to keep all those things एक ही जगह पे मैं इकट्ठा करके रखना चाहता हूँ. Both are of same, all are of same kind. That is why I went to arrays. Then scan keyboard, pure logic. Set columns low, iterate over the rows and see by making all the rows as high and see which is the column is high and see what is the, read the column and and you know which is the row that is high now. The column also now became high. The intersection of that column and that row you already have an array where you have put that particular number. So you do a array read operation and you return that code. Is this thing making sense? Because I see faces stone cold. Most of the boxes are anyways black in color. But whatever I am seeing, they are saying, what is happening? What is happening? He's saying, लग रहा है, नहीं लग रहा है, समझ में आ रहा है, थोड़ा समझ में आ रहा है. Any question here? If you want to work with me personally, where I guarantee to work with you until you secure a well-paid job, book a one-on-one call with me. Link is in the description. Okay, yes, yes, yes. Okay, Chiranjeev, are you able to get what I am trying to say?
Yes, Vamsi, you were just seeing the like step-by-step procedures of like what keyboard like what needs to be done actually before writing an code, like you are showing and like an like an abstract layer of how we should write the code, like, and what is the mechanism, how it flows. That's what you're trying to say, right?
Okay. Essentially, what I am trying to say is refine the problem in your mind by talking to yourself or someone so that you are sure that you understood what it is all about. Hard hitting a problem will not take you anywhere. You can do a hard hitting for 5 problems, 10 problems. But if you get the 25th problem, your hard hitting will not work, because it might not be falling in any of the patterns that your mind has picked up. And this is what is problem solving is all about. It's not, it is all about collecting those patterns, but those patterns have an underlying approach to them. And few people, and there is this concept, if you have heard, something called as first principles, the 5 W's and 5 W's and 1 H and all those things. So you are just adopting those very basic questions to your problem. Why should it be solved? What are the things I need to get solved? In this, now let us ask this what aspect. For this keyboard scanning, what is that I need? I'm not talking about the end objective. The end objective is already the problem statement. Sometimes what happens is we confuse between the symptom and the problem. So do not get confused between the symptom and the problem. Like you go to you visit a doctor. Now the doctor will ask a series of questions, which are symptoms. Then you get diagnosed and a problem will be spelled out. Common experience. Because I am not able to find. So in programming also, if you start hard hitting a problem, which you are not clear about, you will not be able to write any code. Rather, you start refining the problem using these questions, the why words, and finally the how also comes. Now asking this what is that I need first of all with me to detect a key that has been pressed. सबसे पहले मुझे क्या चाहिए? मुझे पहले रोज और कॉलम को कहीं ना कहीं मुझे स्टोर करना चाहिए. Now that memory aspect came, that is how that memory thing of, now I realize that the rows and keys, or the rows and columns are all of integer type. So I need an array. I could have gone even for individual variables, but I went with an array because the language provides it. C provides an array. Tomorrow you pick up some other language which has a better construct or better data type. You go with that. Are you able to understand that this process is now decoupling you from the fine things of particular language? You are now capable of analyzing any problem independent of a language. You become capable there. You refine this process. Your next step in any project tomorrow in your career will not be very heavy because you already have a well established process. The only heavy lifting that you have to do is learn a language, and nowadays that is also not needed. Stack Overflow hai na. There are many things like you but how do you reach a level saying that this part of the language construct or data type I need to pick up if you are not good with the problem analysis? How many of you understand the power of this process now? This is now making you independent of any language. This is truly making you a problem solver. Repeat it so many number of times, your mind will pick up the patterns. Yeah. So let me share the screen. We are at the fag end. If you want to work with me personally, where I guarantee to work with you until you secure a well paid job, book a one on one call with me. Link is in the description. Okay, you got the pseudocode. Then this is the actual code implementation. Debounce mechanism, output value done. Structured programming actually and truly ensures clarity, maintainability, and scalability of the code. The middle part, maintainability, structured program तो अपने आप से वो देगा, but now you are adding test driven development to that process. Maintainability is a cakewalk now. It is done. Your automation stuff, whatever you want to do, it's ensured. And yes, you have now an experience also where we saw that the process actually translated a plain English version of our problem into a functioning C program. Yes. Any questions? Is the structured programming language independent? Yes. Structured programming is language independent. I would say adopt this process of structured programming, and for you to be really very good and really go to a different level, also learn something about object oriented paradigm also. Yeah. How many of you have now conviction or you are at least feeling that इतना मुश्किल तो नहीं है complex problems को control में लाने के लिए? How many of you are feeling like that? Or how many of you have a suspicion on the process? You can unmute and answer. How many of you have suspicion on the process? पूरा का पूरा doubt है वंशी. Yeah, you can unmute and answer.
I'm Vamsi, in my thing, like I'm getting a grip on the process. So like I'm little bit confident, but at the initial when it was starting, uh I was not knowing anything. But right now, after you explain this, like I'm getting little grip. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, how many of you know KTJ? How many of you know KTJ? How many of you know KTJ? Let me type in the chat box. KTJ. Folks. KTJ. How many of you know this KTJ? No. Okay.
I checked in Google, Vamsi, I couldn't find it.
Yeah, you will not find it. Don't know. Okay. Don't know. Yash also says no. Venkat Sai. No. Swaminathan. Okay. Nikhil also says no. Harsha. Bhuvanesh, no.
It's any motivational thing, Mumsi? It is something motivational. Yes.
No. KTJ का मतलब करो तो जानो. You do this process, then you will understand, okay, what this person is saying. मतलब बहुत सारा पापड़ बेले है to come to this understanding that, okay, this process works. This process actually makes the bigger problem very easy to understand, assimilate. You remember? All is well, all is well. You need to, as a programmer, you should always tell to yourself, all is well. Because you don't know from which part, which side, what kind of problem comes. But before telling all is well, you need to understand that, okay, there is a process, I will follow this process, and it is bound to work. If you want to work with me personally, where I guarantee to work with you until you secure a well paid job, book a one on one call with me. Link is in the description. So follow this process. I'm pretty much sure you will easily and instantly, actually, 2 minute mein, like Maggie noodles, you will isolate yourself from the crowd where people will be struggling to understand what the problem is. But when a new code comes to you, you will reach a stage of reverse engineering the code and you will start writing a requirement. The biggest fun you will have actually when you write a small piece of, you can take a small piece of code and try to write its requirement document. How will that requirement document could have been? Try it once. This process will actually help in that reverse engineering process. And you will see that I can conquer anything now. You have eliminated so many variables from uncertainty, and you have there is only one factor now, which is time. Over a period of time, you will have control over that also. Yeah. So I have taken 10 minutes more of your time. So if there are no questions, we are good to go. From the next document would be RFC. And from there, the subsequent documents, almost 5 documents, 5 to 6, completely would be code. That's why I'm taking extra time to talk about the structured programming, because when the code comes in front of you, it would be either a sixer or a clean bowl. दो ही होता है. There is nothing like you will do 2 runs, nothing. Either you hit a 6 or you get bowled looking at the code. It will happen for sure here, but I don't want that to happen. That's why the code is there and as much explanation is happening. I saw it happening in Code2Career Challenge 2 and Code2Career Challenge 1. The greatest help that you can do to yourself is not to give up. So how many of you want this recording so that you know that it will stay handy with me, and once you give me the code, it will not be that I am thrown into middle of a ocean. How many of you want this video? Because I want to, then I will put that link directly in the group. Okay. Sure. So tomorrow I will upload this recording link. Yeah. Have a great time. Enjoy the process. Keep learning. Every moment, if you start learning, you will find life very, very beautiful. Because conducting this Code2Career challenge has been the most beautiful moments of my life. And I want you to also have growth and knowledge. So no questions? Then fine. See you again on Wednesday. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.